Glad to see everybody's engaging in the chat. Okay, let's get started with how to grow to your goal is what I said, right? I had a whole nother title and you'll see that in a second, but I liked how to grow to your goal, right? Because I said how to grow from 0 to 1 million, how to grow to 100 million, just as a government contractor, right? You can achieve these goals for sure as you're moving forward. But I liked putting that title in for today's slide deck of how to grow to your goal. Whatever the goal is you set, you can hit that goal. As long as you do enough of the right things the right way, you're going to be able to hit that goal. And so today, as we get started, I just wanted to talk about just thinking about a goal from a mindset perspective, or taking such a big behemoth type activity such as $1 million goal or a 10 or $100 million goal, and just breaking it down into very achievable bite-sized tasks or efforts, right? And so a revenue goal is no different than a destination. I put here that if you're going to define a destination, like for example, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I want to go to San Francisco. If you define that destination, then you can map out the route. If you don't define the definition, it's hard. But the minute you define it, you basically are kind of reverse engineering. And so, you think about going from Washington to San Francisco. I actually went from Washington State, Fort Lewis, Washington, when I was in the Army. So I was in the Rangers there, and I got assigned to the Pentagon to work for the Secretary of the Army. And when I was coming across the country, I had 3 routes to choose: the northern route on I-90, the central route, or the southern route down there on I-10, I think it is. And so I came across the top, right? And then there was all these steps in between, though. Where am I going to stop? It took days to come across, a lot of activity. And when you want to achieve a revenue goal, it's the same thing. If you define that I want to reach $1 million or I want to reach $100 million, it doesn't matter what it is. You will determine based on your goal, your revenue goal in this case, what needs to be done to get there and how long will it take. If you say I want to get to $250,000, well, hitting that in 3 to 6 months is not an unrealistic goal. But if you say I want to get to 100 million, well, that's cool. That's totally achievable, but let's give it some more time. For example, if you're just getting into government contracting, let's say 10 years, right? No one's here to say you're going to do it fast, but you can definitely achieve that goal. And so today we're going to be talking about that path out there. In today's training, I want to go down on 3 things I want you to pay attention to as you achieve or chase the goals that you have. You can do this if you grow your company the right way. And so I'm going to talk about starting from 0 and going to 100, right? If you use the right processes, and then if you pursue the right dollars, there's certain things that if you just see how clear it could be to get to your goals, you'll be able to achieve it. And sometimes we just cloud that. So we're going to cover down on that. But before we do, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my daily sales or federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you. Today, there's over 100 people registered live. The numbers just kind of keep going up as I'm watching it. We're on multiple platforms, but we have a lot of people in here. And every time we do training, we get thousands watching afterwards. Engage with people. This is your network, right? This is me helping you do virtual networking. Instead of having to go to an event, you can come right here every day at noon. So make sure you tell people who you are. Hi, I'm Neil. I'm from the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. We do this, right? So put 2 or 3 keywords into the chat to let people know who you are. Feel free to throw in where you're from. Like I'm not, but you could say I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and other people might say, oh, hey, I'm down here as well. Let's connect. Or I'm really interested in working down there at Joint Base San Antonio. Let's connect because I'd love to learn more about that. And so just engage people in the chat. Okay, let's get started into the meat. And I want to begin with just the 3 stages of federal revenue growth for small businesses. And so independent of what stage you're at right now, whether you're at 5 million or 10 million, I really want you to understand this as you go forward, that as you're building a business, there is 3 distinct stages of revenue growth or success within the federal market. And we smalls, we sometimes often go to the, I like how I say that, sometimes often. We often go to the 3rd stage, which is trying to grow our company. We're trying to behave like the people who are ahead of us. but we're not quite at that stage yet, right? So the first stage is feeding yourself. This is making sure you're bringing in enough money for your company. And I just wanted to start off with, I was saying here that Apple Computer, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, they did this. They fed themselves before they ever created Apple, before they ever created a company with $1 trillion in cash in the bank. They started in a garage soldering computer motherboards and selling them one at a time, going out, right? That was their thing. They were making money to be able to eat and then be able to build their business. So they started feeding themselves first. They had a general goal, and then they began to grow their company after they started making money. So I want you to set a minimum net income goal. This is what you should be doing when you start a new business. Stop thinking about contract vehicles. Stop thinking about the FAR and all these things. Just think about, I'm a small business owner. How much money do I need to bring into my house in order to just eat? If you don't eat, you're not going to be able to grow, because pretty soon you're starving and you're weak, right? And so you need to eat. And when you're a business owner, that net income that we used to get off of a W-2 or something or a paycheck, we call that revenue in a business, right? But what's yours? You don't need to write it in the chat. Just think to yourself, do you have that number? If you're not making any money yet in the federal market, what is your minimum money? And what I encourage you to do is to go get paid for that skill. It does two things, right? First off, you're going to build relationships, but second, you start getting paid for what you want to build your company as. It's a little different if you sell products or if you're a pure staffing firm. But if you're a staffing firm, you could try to sell the recruiting side of your house and help businesses go in. I can talk about more of that in a minute. You want to be in a hurry for profit, not growth. And what this means is, and this great line came from, again, sticking with Apple Computer, a guy named Kawasaki. I think that was Guy Kawasaki. It's been so long. But he was the Apple Macintosh evangelist back in the 80s. And he wrote this book that said, be in a hurry for profit, not growth. And because what he was trying to point out is a lot of times we try to grow really fast, but we're not taking care of making sure our company and ourselves are making money, profit. If I put an hour in and it costs me $50, let's make sure I'm making $51 at least, so that I'm making that $1 instead of trying to bill out 1,000 hours. And then the last tip I had for you is, as you're feeding yourself, right, is just make sure you're talking to the people who are around you, in particular, the person, I called it the boss, right? But let's say you get a subcontract with somebody and you're in USDA and you're working on somebody's contract. Make sure people around you know that you're a business owner. You're building a business. Do not keep that to a secret to yourself. You don't want to get money from or be in business with people who will sit there and try to hold you to a W-2 type of a personality or environment, right? And so you want to let others know that, look, this is a stepping point. I plan on building my company up, and I'll talk more about this in another slide, but you want to let people know that you're on this journey to building Apple Computer or Booz Allen or Lockheed Martin, right? You're on a journey to build a business. You are not working a job. You just happen to be feeding yourself with your own skill sets in there. So that's the first step. When you've got that and you're making money, the second stage of revenue growth, right? And this is not about how to make money yet. I'll get into that. But your second stage is to get fed that same amount, right? You had a minimum net income. Let's say it's a $200,000 or $100,000 a year is what you want to be bringing into your household. Well, now you need your billable employees to be feeding you. The way I did this in my first company, I actually did it in 2 different times, but in my first company, the way I did it is I landed a gig. I was in network engineering. I was running wires through the ceilings. I was doing all that kind of stuff. And I built a relationship with the leadership and the decision makers within the company, the customer. And within a couple of months, like 2 months, 3 months, I was able to talk with them and say, hey, I can backfill this position and help you with more stuff. Would you be open to that? Sure, I'd be open to that. And I was like, okay, I had my first hire. And for me, that is a favorite path of mine is for the first, like if I'm looking for 10 people, I just keep going into a new position, establishing a presence, and then backfilling myself, and then backfilling myself, and then backfilling myself. And so you want billable employees because their profit will feed you. And so let's say their profit, they make a net profit of 10%, which basically means that 10% can go into your, paying you and feeding you. And so that covers your minimum net income. So if you're trying to make $100,000 into your own pocket, your own bank account every year, then you need 5 full-time equivalents billing out at $100 an hour minimum or $200,000 a year. If you don't know this, The hourly rate times 2 is the annual revenue. So if I have somebody billing out to a customer at $100 an hour, they're basically bringing in $200,000 a year. And so if I have 5 people doing that, they're bringing in $1 million a year. And if 10% of it is profit, then that is sufficient to be able to keep feeding me. So now my employees are making sure I'm fed, and I'm doing my job on behalf of them by doing that last thing, which is starting to work on the business. Most of us have heard this phrase, you want to be working on the business, not in the business. And so when you get started, get in the business for a second just to establish yourself. It's okay to be in the business for strategic reasons. It's not okay to be in the business if you're trying to build a business. It's not okay to work in the business because you're stuck there and you can't get out. So you always want to get out. When you get billable employees making enough money to feed you your paycheck, now you can start working on the company. And so the last thing is you can grow your company, right? You can start thinking about contract vehicles. You really start pushing full-time on business development. We have a customer now who just did this recently in the last couple of months. Is they extracted themselves from all billable activity, and now they're basically 100% business development and sales and growth. And so they're thinking in the out years, how do we get into this agency? How do we grow to this level? But you want to keep these 3 stages in mind. In particular, if you're not really making a lot of money, this is the stage. So let's talk about making money. So part of making the money is having a process. So I said, you want to be looking at the right way of doing business, and those are the stages, the right process. I want you to use a process that's defined and ideal for you. This is not the right process. I don't know if you're familiar with Shipley, and I might be engaging people in the chat who want to, feel free to throw whatever comments in you want, but I think that Shipley is absolutely not for small businesses. I've heard people say, oh, you can, tweak it to bring it down to fit your business. Well, then it's not Shipley. Then it's just something else, right? The Shipley process and the Shipley certification, the training people do, that's not for small businesses. It is overly complicated. It was designed literally for the Boeings and the Booz Allens, these billion-dollar firms. Yes, there's a lot of other people can use it. And yes, they talk about certain stuff, but look at what I have here. The large primes have this huge team behind them. I always say my favorite thing about the overall proposal process, that people who follow Shipley or any of these kind of things at that level, they talk about pink teams and blue teams and red teams and gold teams, all these things. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's just me, Johnny, and Sally. It's just the 3 of us. Even if we're a $10 million firm, we don't have a ton of people here. But in a large prime, this is the thinking that sometimes clouds us, as we get caught up thinking we should behave like a $1 billion firm when we're not a $1 billion firm, right? We're a $20 million firm. We're a $10 million firm. We're a $1 million firm. When you think about a large prime, right, they've got marketing departments. These are people putting out the word constantly to the customers about, hey, here's what we're doing. Business developers are those ones developing relationships and going to conferences, et cetera. Capture managers, they're shaping opportunities in there. They're dedicated to one, like just the Air Force and just a part of the Air Force type thing. And then number 4 is kind of a really good example. Large primes, and you look into this process here, it will talk about number 4, where they bring in retired generals and admirals. I didn't see them bringing in a lot of E4s like I was or something, but they bring in a lot of these generals and admirals, and their jobs just go back and in glad hand, shake hands with people and just keep their ear to the grindstone kind of thing to hear what's going on and where they're going. They have all these different people that you don't have. A separate technical writer from a proposal manager. I mean, multiple writers, right? Solution architects. And they've got their finance people and strategy people in there talking about stuff. We don't have that as smalls, right? And one of the other big challenges with processes that are this big is when they're too complicated, similar to administrative nightmares. If you have too much process, too much administration, then it's going to discourage us from doing it. We just won't even follow it. But what we want to be following is a simple process like we've established for industry, right? For small businesses, a 7-step process that leads to the sales success that you want. If you want sales success, just follow this 7-step process of understanding the customer, identifying who you're going to call them, build strategic relationships, which will allow you to hear about opportunities that you can write winning proposals on and win contracts. So as you're moving forward, really make sure you're implementing a process for your company that is achievable. It's easy. Talk with your team and make sure, talk with yourself to make sure, is the process I have in place too complex, like the top here, or is it simple for us to follow? Hey, I just want to take a quick break to let you know that speaking of trying to make the process easier for you, we put out this directory. It's a federal directory. It's free. It's a federal directory of small business specialists. There's over 1,000 names, numbers, and emails of people in the federal government that you can call and get talking to, right? We just updated it with, I think, 50 or 100 new names, and we refreshed much of the Navy. And so I want to make sure you go download this if you've already got it. If you haven't got it, go and download it. You can find it under the resource tab on our website here, which you see on the right. And by the way, this arrow is pointing to an Ask Me Anything. If you've got questions about what I'm teaching, if you've got questions about your business, a quick question you can ask, go ahead and submit it. You can submit it at any given point, and we try to answer it. Generally, we try to answer it within 24 hours. It's not hard for us to answer the question for you. And so we wanted to be able to offer this yet again as another way to just help the small business community grow and not make you feel like you're alone out there. You're not. We're here with you. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 streams of federal revenue. And this is the big one for me on how you're going to make money. I do 5-year strategy wheels for customers that I work with as we plan out their 5-year strategy. I lay out, where are you going to get the money that you just said you want? So if you say you want to go to $40 million, where's that coming from? If you say you want to go to $4 million, where's that coming from, right? And there's 3 ways you can get money in the federal market. The first way is subcontracting under small businesses. And we'll come back in a second. The second way is prime contracting with a federal agency. And the third one is subcontracting under large businesses. These are distinct revenue streams. And the main reason is because the audience and the way you go after large businesses compared to small businesses, completely different, right? Or the when you can go after it. So when you're getting started, just begin with bullet number 1 here, subcontracting under small businesses. As you start getting traction, then you can go into the agencies to prime. And, let's say you're at 5 million or something and above, then you can be going after large businesses. But once you hit a certain size, you're going to be targeting all 3 of these at all points. At every single year, when you're $5 million and above, let's say, for sure, when you're 5 million and above, you should have a plan to get revenue from all 3 of these every single year. And larges, just so you know, large billion-dollar firms have plans on subcontracting under small. So it's not just a brand new company. It's just the easiest for a new company to get started subcontracting under small. So let me walk through that section for one point. The reason it's easiest, by the way, is because generally you can reach the owner and talk to the owner, and the owner still remembers what it was like to be a business owner. Or the people who are working, around leadership, the ownership of that company, they and the owner, they still remember what it was like to be a small business. So all of them kind of know it, and we tend to be this brother and sisterhood of businesses, if you will. And so we're way more open to saying, sure, how can I help? Not what can you do for me? If you've ever heard people talk about when you go to an agency and when you go to a large prime, you got to be going in there with a value proposition. You got to be talking about how you're going to make their life better. But with a small business, sometimes you don't have to do that. You could, if you can bring value, that's great, but they're totally okay helping. They're still in this, you who are on this training, right? We're still willing to help anybody that we can because you know what the struggle is like. That's why I say it's the easiest to get started in revenue. And so under subcontracting under small businesses, just in case people don't know, the federal government will award a prime contract, let's say to a small business, and they can have you on their team. So you're just 1099ing your company in there. That's subcontracting. So what I recommend is that you subcontract. If you're just getting to that first million and you're trying to go to that, then do this for the first 3 years or 3 million, whichever is longer. Give yourself time to learn. So don't rush in and, hey, the first year I got 3 million, I'm going to go to the next 2 levels. Don't. Take your time to learn more because you can learn the ropes. You can get access to security clearances, things like that. People can teach you about the billing side. They can teach you about proposal writing. I was talking with somebody who was saying, hey, I'm struggling with how to do proposal writing. I'm like, just subcontract for 3 years under several small businesses and get mentored by those people who have gone before you. If you're an 8A firm, right, go find an 8A firm that's been in 5 years, and you can be mentored by them on how to go through the 8A program. So this idea of learning the ropes from other small businesses is really, really valuable. I want you to find 8 strategic partners. So when I say subcontract under small businesses, I don't mean casually. I mean strategically looking for small businesses that are big enough and have a process that's active enough that you can see yourself beginning to achieve some of your own revenue goals. And so from the 8 strategic partners, what I always recommend is 5 groups. There's hub zone small businesses, women-owned small businesses, 8A, and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. And other is anybody who's not one of those 4 programs, because those 4 programs have their own set-asides. And then you have the other, which is like, my business. If I started it, at best, I can be a veteran-owned business because I'm not an STDO. So anyway, so that kind of thing. You want to line up 8 strategic partners. What I say about strategic partners is that they're big enough and committed enough to help you achieve the revenue goals you have. So if you're just trying to get to 1 million and you find 8 companies that are saying, hey, wherever I can help you get in, I will, then finding companies that are like 5 million is perfect. Certainly companies below could help, but the minute you hit companies that are 5 and above, you can certainly expect to have success. And so for larges and for larger companies, as you go, and you start feeling this desire to go prime contract, do not forget about subcontracting with smalls, because you get access to set-asides that are not yours. For large businesses, they get access to almost $200 billion that's set aside to small businesses. And that's why they come back. If they can come back and get 50% of that as subcontracting or something, they're getting really real money. Well, you should be wanting to do that same thing. And then also subcontracting with small businesses gives you access to strategic contract vehicles that they have. I put down here an example is STARS 3. This is an 8A contract vehicle. STARS 3 is an IT contract vehicle. And so it's a $50 billion ceiling, right? Who knows how much they're going to spend, but STARS 2, I think they spent it all and then they extended it above. So if you don't have access to that vehicle, it's a GWAC, so they can use it across the entire government. You want to go get on teams that you can participate on that. We have a customer who just did that. All they did was targeting, outreach, and when they got into the call and they were talking and they began to build a relationship, the company that they reached out to, another 8A company, put them on the STARS 3 contract vehicle. It's kind of a soft put them on, but now this company has access to the other company's vehicle. So you want to be thinking about that. Prime contracting is the second stream of federal revenue. So in this particular case, you're talking about now going after your own contracts, right? It's normal. It seems normal, but you want to wait. This is my strongest recommendation to you, right? I already said wait 3 years, 3 million to get experience in the federal market. What's the rush? You're still making money no matter what, right? But prime contracting, there's a level of, it becomes harder to win contracts as a prime than it does as a sub. A sub, you just go over to the company and you convince them through a relationship, boom, they're like, yeah, we'll give you 20%. We'll give you 10% of the contract, right? Now it's up to them to win it, but prime contracting with the federal agency, you need to be able to provide proof. They don't just give us contracts. And so you want to go to an agency after you have past performance in that agency as a subcontractor. For example, if you're trying to target the Department of Veterans Affairs, be in there, be on subcontracts for a few years where you can come back in when you're going after a prime contract, say, hey, we've been in the VA supporting you, subbing under Booz Allen, subbing under ABC, small business company. And so you can bring that experience as a sub, and then the agency will have confidence in you. You want to sit there and go into an agency, say you're going into DOD, subcontract for a while, get your team the security clearances, get your facility clearance, which can take a year or 2 years or something, right? Take the time to build up the security clearances. Most agencies have some level of clearance. And if you wait to prime until you have some of these in place, you minimize or you increase your chances to win, right? You minimize all the reasons that you won't be able to win. And then the last thing is after you have strategic partners. So when I talked about the VA and you're in there, well, you want to build these relationships with Booz Allen and ABC Small Business Company so that when you're going after a prime contract, don't even try to go after it by yourself. Bring Booz in and say, hey, I'll give you 49%. Again, what do you care? You still get the revenue. Whether you give Booz Allen some of it or you leave it internally, it's still a cost. And now you're building the relationship with Booz, but you're buying trust with the customer through borrowed credibility from Booz Allen, if that makes sense. The VA will look at you and go, wow, it's you, small business, but with you is Booz Allen. That seems good. So prime contracting, keep that in mind. And then subcontracting under large, I just want you to think about large business to me is $1 billion and beyond, not what you think a friend's large company is. It's multi-billion-dollar companies, right? And these companies have a huge responsibility for subcontracting out, but they have a very low threshold for risk, right? They're very risk averse. So they have a huge upside on the amount of revenue you might be able to get, but you don't want to go in there. I mean, you can go in there anytime you want, but they don't want to work with small businesses unless they see those small businesses adding a lot of value and reducing a lot of the perceived risk. And so one way you can add value is to bring contract vehicles, niche down, say you do machine learning or artificial intelligence, something like that, or agency intimacy. You know people. I have a couple of customers who are down in San Antonio, and they're both Air Force veterans who know San Antonio really well. Well, that's attractive to large primes that might be somewhere else, and they're trying to get in there. So there's these ways to be able to bring the value to the large primes. But when you get in there, now you're going after that third stream of money. I took a stab in here. One of the biggest challenges with my daily training is it's only 30 minutes. And sometimes I'm trying to take like 8 hours of training and push it into 30 minutes, and it's hard. I wanted to use this one little example here, but then also tell you I have an Excel workbook that that we make available to sustaining members, but I'll make it available to anybody who's watching this training video. We'll just make it available to you. But this workbook, it's a handout, but the workbook is designed to have you be able to fill numbers in that will tell you how much do you have to have in the pipeline, how many proposals do you need to be writing at what value, things like that. And so if you want that, put planning workbook into the chat. I'm going to explain to you just in a minute what some of the numbers look like when you're talking about it, right? So let's say you're a $3 million firm. Let me just pick the middle. If you're a $3 million firm, if you're a $1 million company and you want to go to 3 million, then you have a $2 million goal, right? So you keep that in your head. That's your sales goal for 2023. And what I want you to pay attention to is certain numbers that are really important to determining everything else. And all this is in the workbook, and it really is automated within the workbook. But what you want to know is your win rate. And when I say your win rate, not your P-win, but your win rate. We win 25% of the time that we try to go after something. We win 1 out of 4 times, right? And so you want to understand that. As you have more data, change this number. And in the spreadsheet, you'll be able to change it. The other thing you really want to know is your hourly rate. And the reason this is important is because you're trying to get in your head, you're trying to visualize what is required to win. And in this example, what I'm saying is that our average hourly rate is $100. That means we bring in $200,000 per FTE. We need 10 FTEs. We need to win contracts, subcontracts, whatever, to bring in 10 FTEs into our company, billing out at $100 an hour in order to achieve a $2 million increase on our 2023 revenue, driving towards that $3 million goal next year. This is a very fast way. I'm at the end of the training, so I'm just pushing it in. If you want that workbook, it requires less training. It has some instruction in it, but more importantly, it's got the values in there. I'll hand it out on Monday. I think Monday is when I'll hand it out. But if you want it, put it in the chat. Let me know. Hey, before we wrap up, just remember this from today's training. As you're driving towards, how do you go to, $100,000, $1 million, $100 million, whatever that goal is that you have, set your goal. And then just like I was alluding to a minute ago, reverse engineer the numbers. What do I need to achieve that goal? And then if you execute on that, for example, in the spreadsheet, it'll talk about maybe how many people do you need to call every day, et cetera. When you execute on those numbers, you're going to achieve the goal. If you're getting value from the training that we do, certainly throw thanks into the chat for the team who's doing that. Consider becoming a sustaining member. At the very least, please remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.